What is going on, guys? So in one of our previous challenges and practices, I've shown you this example of how you can run some code. And also in the previous video where we talked about type def and structures, I've shown you two examples of using the print date function as well as using the date input date function. And just a quick reminder to you, if you were not concentrated, and that's very important that you will be concentrated and into the material every second of this course, because if you miss one thing, it will be very hard to fill this gap and to proceed and move on with the more advanced material. So what we have done previously is that we used the type definition struct date and we know that now every time that we are going to use the word date, it is just equivalent as we have been using previously struct date. So we created the structure, then we wrote down the print date function, that's the name, that's the type, receiving a date dt and printing out the year, the month and the day values. And also we have the second function that is responsible for all of the operations we've done here using the scanf and printf and so on. And the reason why we took and you split it out the code of all of this part to this function to input date and also all of this code to the print date is because we want to leave our main function as clean as possible and to separate the functions that are going to be repetitive functions to different functions. So for example, you know that you will use print date probably more than just once, okay? And probably more than just for one date variable, as well as you're probably also going to create more than just one date variable in your program, in your code. So this will be a function that is responsible for everything instead of having everything in the main and just duplicating the code and messing everything up. Okay, so once it's clear why we've done it, and make sure you watch the previous videos because I'm not going step by step on these two functions. I'm going to proceed and to make some usage in the main function that will take both, will utilize and take advantage of these two functions that we just created, the input date and the print date. So first of all, let's create our new date. Let's say date graduation date. And we just created a variable and it's not initialized. None of its fields are initialized. And one way to do so is to use graduation date equals to input date. And basically what will happen here is that once we reach this line, we will simply call this function input date and it is in charge of creating everything for this structure, reading the values from the user and returning the result. And once the result is returned, instead of using this complex printf, we will simply use print date and specify what we want to print, the graduation date, and there you go. So what will happen now is that if we build and run it, we will see enter date 5, 6, and 2021. And there you go, you have the year, the month, and the day. Everything is working exactly as we expected. And if for some reason you also want, the date of today, for example, okay, the date, today date. So you create two variables. Okay, the first one is graduation date, the second one is today date. Instead of duplicating code, what you simply do is today date equals to input date. Once again, input date. And if you want to print it, you simply print date and you specify here the today date. And there you go. See how clean the main function remains and how we utilize and take advantage of both of these functions that we've just created. Simple as that, guys. Instead of putting everything putting all of this code for the graduation date here, and instead of putting everything for the today date here, we simply use this function as separate units and we work with them correctly. So I hope that's clear. That's, I think, good enough for the basics of structures, understanding how to work with them, how functions work with structures, accessing, reading, printing, and so on. So thank you guys for watching, and let's move on.